Now, Arthur Woods was very interesting and informative. We have a guest from Stribling and Associates here. By the way, you're listening to Stribling's New York on WORAM Radio 710 on your digital dial. It's produced by the amazing Tony Simone. If you want to contact Tony, he's available, T Simone, TSIMONE, at stribling.com, and he can answer any question you have or direct you to people like Dan Crichett, who is in the studio with me and Tony right now. And I have never met Dan until this very moment, but we have been friends via email, and he gives me all kinds of advice on a wide range of subjects. And he has a unique photo of himself on his email page. It's him with a bike helmet on. Hi, Dan.
Indeed. Hi.
Welcome,
nice to
Dan.
see you.
Tell me about that bike helmet. Do you ride everywhere in the city on a bike? Is that what that's indicative of?
Pretty much. The subway and the taxi are, of course, always not reliable. So a bike can get you anywhere you want to go in a hurry.
So how long have you been in this business? And tell us a little bit about your I guess we call it your business rather than your practice, but what you do in real estate.
I think of it as a business, or the way professionals think of their practice, I think of it as a practice too. I've been buying and selling real estate for 25 years, the last 6 or 7 for other people as a broker. Before that, for my own self as an investor.
And are you a native New Yorker? Where are you from?
Well, I came to New York for business school in 1982. And up until that point, I was from Florida.
So you're originally from Florida, and what was the first piece of property you bought in New York? Where did you go to business school? Were you at Columbia by any chance?
Yeah, Columbia, right.
Because I bought my first piece of real estate up there in 1981.
Smart move.
I did very well. Well, I didn't do as well as you would think because I was so excited about it, buying it for a whopping $20,000, and a year later somebody offered me double. I was like, I'm going to double my money.
Impressive.
$40,000, and I was 24 years old. It was more money than I could ever imagine, and I took it, went down to Soho, and bought a painting that now hangs elsewhere. I believe in the home of my ex-wife, but it was a lovely
probably
piece.
did just as well as the real estate did.
It was a Jean Cocteau.
And the moral of the story is,
and it was not such a wonderful piece of real estate. I've brought it up on this show before. It was
Right.
next to some SROs. But let's talk about Dan. So, what makes you unique, aside from somebody calling you the biking broker and the hand gliding broker? I'm told you have a very unique practice, and you really work with a lot of buyers, and you're very effective.
I do. My previous experience before coming to Stribling was on Wall Street. So in the buying and selling of securities and working for investment people, I developed a good feel for value. And buyers, particularly investors, find that kind of valuable when they're out looking at property. I'm just not another person showing them property that we've discovered, but I'm able to analyze and help them assess the potential return.
Well, we don't talk enough about investment property on this show, and it's something that people don't know enough about in this business, whether they're in residential or commercial, really, because it's a tough call to make now in New York City. Where is there a particular area you're focusing on, or do you just look for a special building in wherever it may be?
Well, it's always the fringes of the main market where you find, potential for upside.
I guess I don't want to. Can I ask you do you have a secret sauce? Is there a place like that we're not supposed to? You're not going to tell me about?
Yeah, my secret sauce. Well, my favorite kind of investments are co-ops that act and look like condos. So investors who wish to rent them out can buy and immediately start subletting the apartment for a nice return occasionally. And they're few and far between because, as everybody knows, most
Right.
co-ops are extremely restrictive when it comes to that.
So where do you begin? Do you do due diligence in a particular way? Or do you find, and I'm not joking about this. I found a lot of places. I learned about Harlem riding my bike up there on the weekends.
Indeed. Well, Harlem's no secret at the
But
moment.
but the bike thing was just
The bike
it
works.
was a way to cover a lot more ground.
It's true.
So I no longer have a car and driver.
Exactly. That's the bike helps you cover more territory per minute. That's for sure. Well, the way you start looking for investment property is you first have to discover, or at least try to find out, what the real objectives of the buyer are. Because often how it fits into their overall sort of wealth program and goals down the road can make a difference in the type of property you buy. For instance, non-U.S. investors may be looking for something completely different than someone from Pennsylvania who wants to have a pied-à-terre someday in the city and a place for his kids to live. But in the meantime, he wants to rent it out and see if it can't grow in value. Those people have completely different objectives and would go to completely different potential neighborhoods in completely different kind of buildings.
So where do all your wide range of clients find you? Is it just how you've been doing this for long enough now, 6 to 7 years, that you've built up a strong base and a lot of referrals?
Indeed, referrals for sure. My most recent client, in fact, a deal I closed on just yesterday.
Congrats.
Thank you. Found me literally on an internet search, and he was a bicyclist. So
That's really fast.
that was
awesome.
That was a perfect match.
That's a perfect
He
match.
saw the helmet and said, "You're the guy for me."
I think that a lot of this business is a serendipitous journey. There's a broker who works with another firm, so I'm not going to give his name, but he had a huge dental practice, a very successful surgeon at one point, and he was also a marathon runner, and he was hit by a car and irreparably damaged his arm, so he could no longer function as a dentist, and he moved into the real estate business, and it's it's done well. So I think you have a wide range of practitioners in this business, and it's obviously professionalism and ability and expertise is important, but there can also be something like that will bring you a client. And I think that's what makes this so interesting.
Indeed.
Tony, talk to us.
So what are some things you love about the city? Let's get a little bit more what's the word, esoteric about New York City. What do you love about? I think you have a great listing at Hudson, but you have some great co-ops up on the Upper West Side. And
Oh, sure. Well, who doesn't like the randomness of New York City? Anything can happen at any time. That's the best thing about New York for sure. What do I like in terms of real estate? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Well, as I was saying a second ago, the fringe neighborhoods are always where value is, and that's of course Harlem and North. That's Astoria. Those are places. Bushwick is kind of still opportunity to be had.
Mm-hmm.
The far reaches of Brooklyn. The city's getting bigger and bigger and denser and denser, and it just seems like what used to be a neighborhood that was on the far reaches and you had to commute into something interesting is now an interesting neighborhood on its own, and people want to be there and stay there.
Tell me a little bit about Bushwick. We talk about Brooklyn a lot here, but we've never really covered that area. What's the subway line that accesses Bushwick, and what type of apartments or homes are there? Can you get a house?
Sure. It's the L train, and you can also get there, I think, by the M.
Yeah.
A couple of different ways. And Bushwick is still, it's not quite the Wild West, but there's still a lot of non-traditional brokerage and non-traditional buying and selling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really want to beat the streets and knock on some doors, literally knock on doors, you can find property that could be for sale.
So an old version of cold calling, except using the phone, you just go door to door and see if somebody wants to make a deal?
Oh, for sure. Once you identify somebody who has a need for something, as long as you know a way to find people who can fill that need, and that may be through your own contacts, but it also may be through mailing, going into city records, finding out who owns property, winding your way through the records to find out who the ultimate decision maker might be on that property, Googling them, finding where to, finding out how to contact them, and the next thing you know, you're on a phone and something may happen.
So your business school background gave you a lot of impetus for the due diligence in your career prior to this. I get that sense.
Yeah, I would say that. Behind every sort of good opportunity is something that looks like, oh, wow, this looks like it could be a deal, is usually a story.
Mm-hmm.
And that story could be buried in the financials of the property. It could be buried in some rumors about what's going on in board meetings. It could be buried in some interesting facts about what's going on in the neighborhood or next door.
How many total listings do you usually have at a time? How many do you have now?
At the moment, I've got about 6 listings, a couple of rentals, 4 sales, and that's about average.
And
That's great.
And you're concurrently working with a group of buyers too? Or
Oh, sure.
That fluctuates.
Yeah, at any given time, I've always got about 10 active buyers, and some of them have a year to go. Some of them are wanting something next month.
How does somebody find you at Stribling? Give us your email or the connection to your website. We can go to stribling.com, and you want to spell your last name properly for us so I don't botch it?
Yep, it's Dan Crichett, Crichett, not to be confused with Bob Cratchit in Dickens. And I think if you Google my name and Stribling, at least the first 3 or 4 hits will be either the New York Times article about me or my webpage or something.
If it's a photo of me hanging 10 on a wave, then you know you've got the wrong page. But if it's some very handsome man, youthful looking, with a bike helmet, then you know you've got
You
Dan.
got Dan.
You got the guy.
Dan, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
thanks for
us. This
joining
has
us.
been very educational
My
and
pleasure.
fun.
You bet.